I'll call the Fireplace and Civil Defense Committee together with Mr. Mahan to discuss the police department staffing. Mr. Mahan.
Thank you, sir. Folks, we have two things tonight. We have the ordinance 2023-12 that we talked about last week, 2 weeks ago, and the chief's here to answer questions about that. You'll also see on your agenda we have 2023-14, which is for a new community liaison. And Chief, if you could reserve me a few minutes at the end to talk about the funding for that. I've got some numbers for council.
Okay.
And we'll toss those out. That'll be just for first reading tonight, though. So that's the new community liaison would be first reading tonight. Okay. Chief, did you have questions emailed to you?
I had no questions emailed or anything of that nature.
Okay.
So I'm
Council?
open to any questions that anybody has about.
I would mention this. I talked to the chief. Since it's under the liaison is under my committee, we'll be giving that a first reading with
Yes,
the
sir.
committee meeting. So
Okay.
if people want to read through what the chief gave us today,
Yeah, I dropped off a copy of the job description for that.
Yep.
That's not for tonight. That's just so you have plenty of time
Right.
to
right,
look
it gives
over.
them
and,
time to read it. If
Yeah.
questions pop up, and you can get a hold.
and
of the
again,
chief.
yeah, if you have questions about it, give me an email or call me.
Okay, any questions about the proposed 3 officers? No, that's the resolution 2023-12.
If I could, Terry, we're all squared away on where this is in the budget, right? Nothing has to be moved around, taken care of.
It's in place.
Okay, so we'll give that its second reading tonight, and then we'll go to third reading in 2 weeks.
And that's a grant that's funded for 3 years or?
No, this
No,
is,
sir.
the 3 officers are coming out of the budget.
Correct. Budgeted money.
Okay.
Yeah. The
Budget.
community liaison, we can go ahead and just talk about that for a minute. And Terry, please correct me if I'm wrong, but the chief and Terry discussed that the total cost of that is $84,000 a year, pay, benefits, equipment, et cetera, for this second community liaison worker. But in 2023, we're only looking at half of that, because by the time they get hired, you're talking about 6 months. So $42K. We've got a grant for $35,000. The United Way just kicked in $1,000, and then the mayor and Terry worked in some ARPA funds to take care of it for 2023. The hope is in 2024 there'll be there's another opportunity for a grant, and we're going to ask for more funding, and that'll give the grant writer time to have data, the community impact, et cetera.
What happens if we don't get the grant in 2024?
Then we can either do away with the position if we find it's not working for it, or we can budget for it in the next year's budget cycle.
So you all have that position in front of you. Chief said that this is primarily a second shift position, is
Yes,
that correct?
primarily a second shift position, and primarily focusing on domestic violence and family violence issues.
So we'll have that first read, well, Mr. Francis will have the first reading tonight of that legislation, so.
When this person's hired, will they know this?
We will be very clear with them about
It's based on grants?
it's based on grants and it's based on funding. We will be very clear on that. We have not advertised or started looking or anything else yet. What you have in front of you is a job description that we've come up with that we submitted along with the grant to help us get the grant. And that job description has not been approved by civil service yet. So we will wait until the position is filled, and then civil service will approve the job. It's not a by per se. Rob, correct me on this. Is it? What's the unclassified?
No, it is classified.
It's a classified. I always get those two mixed up.
It is classified, so it falls under the jurisdiction of the Civil Service Commission, but it is, it's a salary position.
It is not a tested for position, so there's no test for it. There's no entry level test. It's a advertised interview hiring process.
Okay, thank you, Chief.
Oh,
Sorry, go
yes,
ahead.
So how are we doing with the one we have in place now with our social service agencies? Are we working with all of them now, part of them now? Is
We're
it better
working
than what
with-
it was?
We're working better with any agency that we've worked with in many years. Mr. Jackman's ability to work with these agencies and do follow-ups outside of the officer's official duties has been great. We've partnered with numerous agencies for care for mental health, addiction, and it is taking a burden off the officers doing the follow-up.
So, will this gentleman, or excuse me, this person be working directly with these social service agencies as well?
As well, yes, as well. And along with Mr. Bourne's office in the prosecution and victim services for the domestic violence victims. It's not to replace anything that we already have in place, it's an addition to help with there's some new stuff coming down, is it Marcy's Law, the new
Yeah.
regs are coming down in
Well,
June,
they started the new law started on April 6th,
April 6th.
the new requirements.
Okay, so there's a lot more reporting that has to be done, there's a lot more victim notification that needs to be done. When a person gets out of jail, when a person has a court hearing, when a person has a TPO or protection order issued or dropped, there's a lot of follow-up with the victim these days to help protect the victims and keep them in the know of what's happening with their abuser.
Sorry, jump
So-
in. And if we don't have this position, who does those duties fall on to?
Would fall back to Dan Jackman, who would do some of those in addition to his other duties right now. We also have a detective that does part-time domestic violence stuff. He reviews cases, he does follow-up. This position would always also clear him up to handle more traditional cases. And some of it would fall back on the prosecutor's office.
Yeah, we do all of the victim notification. Sometimes we can't find victims, and so we end up calling down to either the police department or the sheriff's office and asking them to detail a road officer to go out and try and locate people.
So,
And this position it's something that has been a benefit not just to the city, but also to those agencies that you're working with, correct? Is it helping with that continuity of care, which,
I believe it is. I can't speak for the other agencies, but everyone that we've talked to and that I've talked to, love the concept of it, that it's helping with the communication channels up and down. Back, there's a lot of different things that Dan's put in place for care and follow-up. Riverside Recovery, the main place, BHP, Licking Knox Mental Health Boards, the Domestic Violence Shelter, New Directions.
when I was at the sheriff's office this week, they mentioned the work that he's doing and in an admiring way, and said that this was something that they would hope to be able to put into place at the sheriff's office as well, so.
Chief, are we doing any kind of tracking? And I know it's difficult because each case is different, to see, like, if this is having an effect on recurrences in some of these situations?
I haven't delved real deep into that.
Okay.
To see about recidivism with the cases. I know that some of the people that Dan's directly involved with, that their probation officers and the court system has not had to deal with them as much. When Dan's helping getting them housing, he works with the city water department. How do we get your water bill paid if you need water bill paid? To keep you from getting your water shut off to starting up another problem, so.
I'm just wondering, since we're thinking of adding a second person into this role, is it because we're having an uptick? Are we recognizing, I guess?
Quite
like-
honestly, it's the volume of calls.
Okay.
The volume of calls. Dan handles or reviews probably 200 to 300 calls a month.
Okay.
Hundreds of calls. We've had 41 domestic violence calls already this year. Active domestic violence calls. We've had over 300 disturbances already this year, so we're at 100 a month on those. And then you factor in drug overdoses, substance abuse issues. He's transported many people, talked many people into going to get mental health care, whether it's at Knox Community Hospital. We've been utilizing a lot of things up in Mansfield at Med Central with some of their services, because they offer some services that we don't have down here. He's made referrals to BHP, like I said, Riverside Recovery, the Main Place, the Freedom Center, Dr. Fett, I can't pronounce her last name. She's been very supportive of the program, and they talk on a weekly basis for different people.
Thank you.
So,
Is there another name for BHP on here that you give me?
Behavioral Health Partners.
I saw where you called him once.
Okay.
The domestic, is that like the drugs? What's causing?
No, Miss Seal, domestic violence is family violence.
Yes, but do you know, is drugs involved with it?
A lot of
Why is
times,
it
a lot of
increasing?
times, absolutely. Substance abuse, addiction issues are most likely tied to domestic violence issues. Many times they go hand in hand. The drug issues, especially alcoholism, is a major player in domestic violence issues, which is also stuff that we can get counseling for through the Freedom Center and Riverside Recovery.
They have been increasing. I was just wondering what's causing it to increase.
I don't know the answer to that one. To be honest with you, I don't know the answer to that one. Domestics have steadily increased. You know, anecdotally, in my career here, we used to have, you know, one every 3 or 4 or 5 days. Now we're having 1, 2 a day. You know, every 2 days.
Some of that's increased people just reporting cases that have already happening.
Mm-hmm.
Others of them, you know, the breakdown in the family unit, you know, the drugs, the alcohol, all of those things contribute.
There's been a big push in the last few years for education for domestic violence. Educating victims that they don't have to be a victim anymore, that they need to report things. We've put things in place like the LAP program, which is the lethality assessment program. We put that in place. We've put the strangulation forms in there that kicks things up a notch when those type of things happen.
We give out packets of information to every officer that can hand out to the victims at the scene with numbers to contact both in my office and New Directions and other service providers.
A lot of the other uptick is, if you remember a few years ago, we added Miss Brittany Whitney as our dedicated domestic violence municipal level prosecutor, and she's done great things with getting some of these cases some resolution.
Yeah, I was hoping it would go down, not up.
Well, our prosecution, our successful prosecution numbers have gone up significantly.
Yeah.
We can't really control the number of people entering this system.
Ms. Siebel, I mean, they may always have been there. Maybe we're looking a little harder for them now. We're getting more victims to come forward and say they don't want to live like this. The case numbers may have always been there, but the days of, I think we're slowly getting out of the days of this is my life and this is how I have to live it, are passing.
I think that people see that we take it seriously and we will protect victims, and that helps them to make the decision to come forward.
And we're putting assistances in place like a dedicated prosecutor, a victim's assistant, hopefully a liaison person to help them with all these different services. We have a ton of services in our county. And sometimes it's a matter of matching the services with the people and getting them in place. And, you know, sometimes just calling them up and seeing how they're doing a week later. You know, quite honestly, my officers, they go to the scene, they handle the call, they do what they need to do, they do their paperwork, they make an arrest if necessary, and then they have to move on to the next step. They have next on. And I hate to say that, you know, sometimes follow-up falls through the crack or it doesn't get done, but with the busy schedules, that sometimes happen. With these folks like Dan and hopefully the liaison, that those will be minimized.
Aren't they some of the most dangerous calls that the police officers have?
Domestic violences are listed next to traffic stops and warrant services are probably the most dangerous call we go on. Everybody there is emotionally charged, wound up tight, a lot of times intoxicated, inebriated, and yeah, they're very emotionally charged issues. So yes, they are dangerous.
I did an opportunity last week to interview Dan. He He took out an application to be on the Winter Sanctuary Homeless Shelter Board. Impressive person, impressive credentials, and his connection with all these different agencies is really going to help if he's appointed to the Winter Sanctuary Board, because he does have those connections. And impressive interview. We had 3 people on our nominating committee that interviewed him. We were all very impressed with the man.
He looks like a giant bear, but he really does have a soft heart, and he's got a gentle touch with people to help him. He really does.
Anything else?
Okay, thank you, sir. Thank you, Chief.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you.
Going to adjourn the Fireplace and Civil Defense Committee. Going to move now on to Employee and Community Relations with Mr. Francis. Discuss the engineering intern program.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. Ball, I know I may have put you in a bit of a bind and a challenge of 5 minutes, so I'm not going to try and take up all your time, so I'll talk really quick so and hand it over to you to explain the intern position for the engineering department.
Great. All right, so pretty simple. We have called this the Kenyon Intern Program, and they have been working in the engineering department. And we set it to, this legislation for Kenyon has a sunset date, but then the original, we started with them only working during the school year. Kenyon's expanded their program. They also are going to have students available for the summer. The other thing is, well, the NAS has engineering students, so there's also some other colleges out there. So we decided to just call this the intern program. And I think if Todd could roll it up, we've set up salaries for the next 2 or 3 years, so that we wouldn't have to come back every year to immediately to reauthorize this. We've got it to where there's a little step so that it's taken care of for, I forget, 3 years, 2 years.
He's
Pulling up right now. Yes. So that's the simple questions.
Did you have a question, Mr. Hilliard?
No, the only thing I saw on here though, it says, I didn't see a date past 9/24.
Yeah, it's 3 years. It's up until the August of this year at one wage. Yeah,
Up
then-
until August 31st, $11. It says 9/1/23 to 8/31/24, $11.50. It says 9/1/24, $12. So is he just going forever after that?
Right. So if we want to adjust the salary, we would have to come back. So the positions would continue to exist, but then if we wanted to change the salary, we would come back after that and recommend a new salary.
That's why there's not an end date on it.
Right. Or we would just continue to use it at that salary.
And if I could be open, I sent something to Rob today. I know we've had a lot of conversations about the parking enforcement officer, so I've actually prepared just today legislation about seasonal help, interns, part-time employees that I want to bring to council next meeting, where we talk about where everybody's pay rates should be.
Right.
So that'll be, the pay rates might be a separate discussion. This is more to authorize the number of positions Brian's looking for.
Right. So the summer help legislation these have always been separate. So that'll be, the summer help will be another packet. This will be the intern, what we previously called Kenyon interns will become just an intern program.
They wouldn't be brought in as summer help.
No.
They're brought in as intern.
Yes.
Did you budget for 2? The way that budget is, it doesn't define out 2 interns, so I couldn't really find it.
No, it's difficult because basically myself has a line item, Jason has a line item, Quentin has a line item, and then everyone else is in a line. So with the Kenyon students, they only work a maximum of 10 hours a week, so it's not a big burn. But we do budget for, I usually lump the interns and then overtime I put about $10,000 in that account, and my folks don't like to work overtime, so we don't usually spend it all. I don't know that we'll get 2 for the summer. We have 2 right now. We may only have 1 for the summer.
What are your plans with them?
So the other thing we want to bring up is the interns would like to come give a presentation to council on their work for the summer. we have to work on scheduling that because their finals start on May 8th. But they've been doing the history of the buildings around City Hall. They've been doing a deep research on that. We are also going to have them do research on the businesses along Sandusky Street because of our traffic redirect. We're going to have to buy some buildings, and we want to document that history before there's significant changes. So they're working on that. Our data intern is working on, I can't remember, it was 2017. We went and we analyzed the utility bills for some of the city buildings, and we found some air conditioning problems and different things in the Plaza building because, we have people that pay electric bills, but they're not the same as the people that use the electric. We did a study in the utility of all the top 5 sewage pump stations a few years ago. We studied the electrical consumption, and then we found a couple of those had problems that we couldn't see actually looking at the pumps. So they're going back and they're actually looking at every single electric meter in the entire city and analyzing a 3-year trend on those electric meters. So that's one of those. Small, again, this is 10 hours a week, so we're not asking them to design. We don't need them to design water lines and things like that. It's doing things that we should do that just don't get done by a regular employee. And they learn a lot. They're like, this is for the Kenyon students, I don't know, not always, this is their first job ever. Everybody here grew up having a paper route or baling hay or doing something like that. These students do not. We had a fantastic NAS student. He had been homeschooled and then went to the NAS. This was his first job except helping his dad's business. And, he called right before Christmas, and he's got a great job at a factory, and, he's becoming a mechanical engineer. But we showed him the river, we showed him different things, and guys and girls have really gone on to do some fantastic stuff after being in these programs. Most of them are not thinking about a full-time job with the city. They want to get a good experience and, do some public service and move on.
Anybody else have any other questions? Does anybody have any objections to suspending the rules and just carrying this into a third reading? And by the way, I liked what you say that some of these, this is their first job they had.
Yeah.
You can't say anything more to the excitement of somebody when they this is my first job. Mm-hmm. And then he went on to do something else.
Yeah.
But in engineering, mechanical engineer,
right.
We should feel good about that we extended that hand.
Yeah, the one lady, her job, I got a call from basically a security check and this lady now works for the Department of Treasury in Washington, D.C. And so she had her first job here, and then her second job is the Department of Treasury, downtown Washington, D.C. So, these are cool people.
Thank you, Brian.
Thank you.
Thanks, Brian.
Yeah, we're going to adjourn the employee and community relations. Move now on to utilities with Mrs. Wood to discuss the Elliott Street sanitary sewer.
All right.
Welcome back, Mr. Ball.
It's been a long time. Good to see everybody. So Elliott Street, this is I think really something that's brought to us by council. I think
By a neighbor.
Yeah, Mike had gotten several calls. I think Mel, you've gotten several calls. My staff, Jason, and then guys from our utility went out, and it's not something it's not really easily fixed, and it's not the citizens' fault. So I don't know if it was originally a lateral or it's just we have too small of a sewer line in this section of Elliott Street. Basically, you're 0 through 7 Elliott Street, because it's 1/2 to 7, I think, are the addresses, or 1/2 to 9. So just like literally out the back door of City Hall, behind the new Veterans Center, you have a block of people that are all struggling to get rid of their sewage. And
ours touch house to house, they're so close.
Yeah, the houses are really close together. The sewer is out in the road. It's too small. There is not a manhole to get to the end of the line to clean it. I don't think we were able to get the camera all the way through it either. So the idea is basically just a simple 1-block sewer line replacement. It's going to be approximately $100,000 when we count the road repair, depending on whether you want to put it back as a brick street or an asphalt street.
The brick streets are protected.
Yeah, well, that's asphalt, but
Oh,
we could put it back as a brick street.
that's up to you.
So there's some options
Then
there,
you
but
protect asphalt.
approximately 100,000, something we can't just go out and take care of without formally going out to bid. So we would ask, you know, if there's any questions.
So when you said it could be put back as brick, would it be cheaper to do brick?
I don't know. It depends on how big a hole we have to dig. We could talk about it.
It'd be a narrow street to do, and it's also between brick streets.
Yeah. The other, my staff suggested if we could do concrete and make it red and put a brick pattern on it too.
There you go.
How does something get to this point? How did we miss this? How did it happen to be a neighbor that told us this issue is ongoing?
Well, so that's kind of the subject of the next meeting, but we can bleed over to that. So, we have been trying to get to the staffing level where we have a proactive team in our distribution and collection. So I think I'll look at, they really started probably January, as soon as the weather broke after the cold spell. So we have our sewer camera. We had a guy trained, but he left. We're rebuilding, so we're looking at having a proactive team. So Jamie Pay is as a union supervisor taking the lead to be the crew that goes out with the camera and runs these sewer lines and does the camera work. And then we've got, look at Rick, we've got the work order system. We're getting the data in, and we're seeing, a lot of times they'll call the billing office, somebody will go look, and the problem gets cleared, or they call a plumber, together it gets worked out. But then we haven't really been doing a good job of tracking those repetitive calls. So what's starting to happen, we've been, about a year into the work order system. With the work order system, we're trying to track those repetitive problems. And so what Jamie's doing now is he's going out and cameraing the known problem areas and trying to see, like, is it roots? Is there something wrong with the pipe? Because we can take the machine and we can put it in there and clean it, but then if we don't go back and use the camera, we don't really know why it was like that. Did somebody flush, something they shouldn't have down the toilet, or is there actually a problem with the line? So that's where we're working toward the proactive side.
Since we've leaked into the next meeting, can you continue the conversation of the training that's needed since the gentleman left?
Yeah,
Why we have the resolution on we do?
Yeah, I think so. The guys have been getting, the first quarter of this year, we've completed between 3,000 and 4,000 linear feet of sanitary sewer camera work. And, the idea is, unless there's an emergency or if there's a whole bunch of people who are on leave, we're moving that way. But that being said, based on 225 miles of known sanitary sewer, that project will take an additional 75 years to get through all of the sewer that we have. So that's why Jamie's being strategic. He's starting with the areas we know have problems, and they're trying to document what the problem is.
And I thought we needed this other company also to expand some training. Is that not?
Well, so the idea of this, we are looking, I talked to Terry earlier, we're looking at the TIF district. It's about a square mile, and we would like to just camera that entire district. We would do storm and sanitary, and that's so that would get it taken care of. We could identify any problem areas more rapidly, and again, our folks could see how other companies do it and learn some tricks of the trade.
I think the question you're asking, Jamie's certified in this, but he's not
Yeah.
certified in the software, correct? Isn't that what the
We
training's
switched-
about?
Well, he was trained, but then we switched softwares. So
And that's
he's-
what he needs training in. Isn't that
Yes.
where we're heading with this?
Yeah,
I do have a question though. When you say TIF District 1, which one is that?
Coshocton Avenue. Coshocton Road, Coshocton Avenue.
So we're doing all the work within that district.
That is the goal, yes.
So that's the same TIF district we're taking money out of to do Upper Gilcrest Road expansion.
Mhm.
So I'm glad the funds are there and I know how those were used, only that TIF. But I'm looking at Coshocton Avenue. I have no idea how much money's in that. And we'll be using have you even thought about how much we were gonna put in Upper Gilchrist yet?
About
Two? What's it take to pave Coshocton Avenue?
Well,
We
so
have,
it's 20. So Coshocton Avenue is US 36. So our share is 20%. So our last, I'll look at Terry. I think last time was about $1 million was our share.
the
Of
reason
that.
I asked, that was done in 3 phases, correct?
No, it was. I mean, it was all done.
My point is, the first phase is gonna need repaved
Mm.
one of these years.
No, it was all done. So they did High Street, the Square, and Coshocton Avenue all in one contract.
So we're confident our TIF money will build back up when it comes back around
Oh,
again.
yeah. Mhm.
That's what I'm after. I don't wanna say, well, we don't have, it's getting pretty rough, we don't have the money to fix it.
Well, so with the ODOT schedule, the thing you have to remember is this TIF expires in 2025. So the TIF will actually be expired before ODOT comes back to pave it again.
Brian, I had somebody call me the other morning because it was cold. You know where it leaks there in front of Donnelly and it was iced over. Will that camera thing discover that, or is that still an issue that's not city lines?
So that is a gravel French drain that ODOT installed
Okay.
with the road project. So there are probably some pipes there, but it is a gravel drain that's probably clogged. I have actually met with ODOT a couple times
Okay.
and asked them how they would recommend fixing it,
Yeah.
and their answer was, "We have no idea."
It was really wet the other day.
It
more
was
than I
really
think I've
frozen
seen
the other
for a while.
day.
Yeah.
So if you go to the south side of the road, there's like a grove of cattails, and then there is a series of stormwater ponds that collects the water, and then that feeds the spring that comes up in the middle of the road. So there are some drain pipes that we would like to get in and try to camera with some of the smaller camera heads, and so it would help to try to
Okay.
trace this out. But yeah, ODOT was like, "We don't have any idea how to fix this." I'm like, "Well, that's good."
Yeah, the French drain, you have to dig them out and
Yeah,
get all the mud
besides,
out of
you
it.
know, digging the whole thing up and, starting over, so. We've kind of mixed and matched here a little bit. So back to Elliott Street,
Yeah.
we would, Jason already has the plans pretty much done. We need to do a little bit of review and determine if we need an EPA permit. I don't think we do, because we'd just be increasing existing line up one size pipe to a standard size. We're gonna add some manholes and get the proper slope on this, and hopefully get the problem solved this late summer.
So this would be TIF money, part of the
Elliott
five?
Street is not. Elliott
Okay.
Street is general. It would all come out of our utility wastewater fund,
Okay.
which we did program. We should have money available to take care of this. We were light on the wastewater projects this year. In the
And it's
budget.
just that area, that 6 or 7 houses in there, we
Yep,
think?
it would be basically the length of the street,
Okay.
It's one block.
one block.
So that would get done this year?
We hope so.
Okay.
We have to. We'll finish the plans, put it out to bid to the world, and get some competition, and hopefully get a good contractor and get it done.
Okay. Any further questions? So any objection, as Mr. Francis said, to suspending the rules on that one?
No.
Okay.
Then any last questions on the idea of doing, so the camera work, this is more, we're treating it more like an engineering firm. We're not bidding it. We're asking for proposals. We're a qualified company. We've identified at least 3 companies that could do this camera work for us in an expedited
And our
fashion.
guys are gonna be working right beside him, right?
Yeah. We
And-
did a little test run. So one of the companies, Columbia Gas, has completely reformatted their schedule. So one of the companies you used to see in town quite a bit was working for Columbia Gas. They were moving all their efforts down to Intel to hook up the gas to the new plant. So this company was dropped. We had them do a little small test run just to see how fast and how much time it would take. We had our staff out there surveying and helping to find manholes, and it was very efficient.
So do we own the camera and the software then, and we just need training
Well, no,
to?
we have a crew. We have our own trailer and our own camera. We are going to try to do 1 square mile of camera work, because our guys, based on their current duties, are getting about 4,000 feet of sewer done per quarter. Now we expect that to get better, but still, with 225 miles of sewer, we're looking at like 70 years to get this done. So the TIF district, which has funding, we would do just that district, that basically slightly less than 1 square mile. We would do all the camera work for storm and sanitary, and then we can identify, we can identify problems. It gives us a sort of a higher level of service for our ratepayers in that district. And it takes a burden off Aaron's staff, who is looking at a 70-year to get through every pipe in the city. So it takes that 1 square mile off their shoulders, and they can work on the problem areas that we know of in the other parts of town. If that makes sense. And then our guys will have a chance to ride along. They're not going to be there every day because our people will be using our camera too. So.
You know, I always get nervous entering into contract 4 when we don't know like a limit. So is this just for this year? Is there up to a dollar amount you're thinking, or?
Oh, yeah, we mentioned that. So probably 400 to 450,000 is what Mr. Scott and I had discussed. And we would enter into that contract, and it may spill over into next year, but we would only select one company, use that, and if we needed to do something again, we'd come back next year.
Any other questions?
Very good question.
Okay. No objections. I'll suspend the rules on this one also.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Can I get some sewer line pictures for my Christmas cards?
Sure.
All right, we're going to adjourn the both of the utility committees. We're going to move now to the street and public buildings with Mr. Severance to discuss the 301
We're
Boynton
running
Street.
about 10 minutes
What's that?
ahead.
Okay, we're 10 minutes ahead. Let's take a break.
Yeah, the lawyer for the applicant is
Okay.
supposed to be here at 5 minutes
Okay,
after.
we're taking a 10-minute break.
Yeah, let's
Yeah.
take a break.
Sorry, should have talked longer.
Just look to see. It's been that way
We don't know if they're gonna be here,
not,
but Bruce will read it.
Huh?
Bruce is gonna read
Bruce is
it.
gonna read it?
Yeah.
Well, that's what, I always afford first to the mayor.
Yeah. He called me last night and I thought he
Oh,
might
that's
have
the
COVID.
annexation.
He tested negative,
Is
so.
this the alley?
I just got
I'm not looking at here.
Yeah, I think
It's now
This is
almost
the
7:05, it's
street.
7:04 now. We're gonna move on to the,
this one.
streets and public buildings, Mr. Severn to discuss 301 Boynton Street easement.
Yes, we're going to discuss this. It's Resolution 2023-32 this evening that we'll be looking at. And Attorney Kidwell is here to talk to us about this. If you'll come on up to the... Does he need to announce himself?
No.
Okay, good. Just talk to us about this. Mr. Zick's going to try to pull the picture up here for us as well.
I was gonna
but-
say, and I don't know. if
Did you
it's
print
gonna
some
help or
off?
not. I brought just.
That'd be great.
screenshots.
That's great.
Everybody see one?
Yeah.
I'd
Okay.
still like to see it. Thanks.
That, and I guess I should have given everybody Dave Mills' survey location.
It's actually attached
Has
to
it?
the
Yeah.
legislation.
Oh, is it?
Yeah,
Yeah.
the survey is attached to
We have-
legislation.
I'd still
Yeah,
like to see
maybe
it.
the pictures will just
Yep.
help a little bit for people. Good, thank you.
I'm good.
And I drove by this the other day, so
And everybody has the survey location print, Rob? Yeah, right.
yes.
So this came up, I mean, what I've learned is the Knox County Auditor's site is
4
not
feet
always
right
accurate. I see. Right, Rob? Not only accurate in pictorial, but, and also ownership and so forth. But anyway, so, you know, I don't trust this 100%. And looking at it, just with, it looks okay. But then when you look at this, you see a little encroachment. And so this was brought up in a recent real estate sale. Tracy Mills Surveyors prepared the survey location print, and I said, Dave, why don't you go back out? And yeah, no, and Dave was certain that it was correct. So this is what we're left with. In the past, we've asked for an easement. I won't call it a temporary easement because that's a little misleading. It's an easement for so long as the structure is there. So if the structure were ever torn down or removed or whatever, the easement would automatically go away. So it could be temporary, but this house has been there for
A while.
a long time.
And, you know, the issue with this one is this is actually the largest easement that I can remember council looking at. Normally it's
Yeah.
a few inches.
Rob emailed me back and said, does that say 4 feet? I said, oh yeah, it says 4 feet. Yeah.
So,
We used to have a lot of these. You know, and we used to have a lot of these, and recently we haven't had many, but it used to
Yeah.
be pretty common to have these.
yeah, well, we've caught a lot of them, and we've dealt with them by these easements we've granted, you know. And there's one that's kept coming back that we haven't set up because they've got a garage right over one of our utility lines, and we're not gonna grant them one for that. So, but, I mean, that's the biggest issue here was the fact is the 4 feet.
4 feet.
And so, I just wanted council to be aware
Rick, can
of
you
this.
click on sales on that?
Sales.
Can you,
Yeah, Mike, if you look at the survey location print, Mike and Chris Clifton just sold it to Mike and Diane Trago.
how long did, I'm looking at a little history. I know that house has been there quite a while. And I know it just got remodeled.
And Mike and Chris have owned it for like 30 years.
They've owned it 30 years. And do you know in that 30 years, did they add that on or was it there? Do you have any idea?
I don't know. Quite frankly, I didn't ask Mike or Chris that question.
Well, I had Lacey check through zoning permits, and at least for the last 25 years, there's not been a zoning permit to
Add on.
If you pull up they have the sketch on here.
Clifton's owned it since 93.
Yeah, 80. Yes. Huh.
That doesn't even really. Well,
That
trying
sort of
to
shows
get
that
blue
the house was
portion,
originally
right?
constructed as,
that.
Oh, wait.
yeah.
I'm sorry.
And then because the 12, see where the green comes out there?
Yeah.
That's gonna be onto the alley. And then it looks like at some point that they enlarged the nonconformance by just sort of following the line back.
Oh,
Yeah.
for the purple part?
Yeah.
But it doesn't look like they pushed it out though
No.
towards the alley.
No, they followed
Followed
the
the
line
line,
back.
yeah.
And so it's paralleled there. So
Yeah.
Yep.
Brian, do you have a utilities issue at all?
yeah.
There are utilities in Boynton Street, but they're on the other side.
Yeah. And this is
This is 1960. Yeah, it looks like the last change was 1960.
Yeah.
so.
Oh, I guess I got one right here.
Yeah.
So, was the house really built in 1910? Do we know? Is that a fact, Rob?
That's
Probably.
correct as
Okay.
So, Rick, in 1960, what did they say was added on?
the
A shed in the backyard.
square.
Oh.
Yeah.
Not
And
the
we don't
house.
have any improvements prior to 1960, so.
So the nonconformity was enlarged somewhere between 1910 and 1960.
So when we do something like this, have the neighbors been contacted or anything?
Well, no, the only people who are, I mean, because it's in the city right of way, so we're the only property owner who's, but we have never traditionally contacted neighbors. I mean, this one is on an alley rather than a street.
Yeah, I say my little map is it says Cedar Street. That's not correct. That's Cedar Alley. And
Yeah.
well, actually, my assistant put that on there, but I put it on there if
Yeah,
she
well.
did. So.
I mean, I didn't see a line of sight problem.
No, there's not. It's actually up a way. It's actually up.
Actually, if you didn't know that's what you're supposed to be looking at, you wouldn't notice it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because everything in some of these, like that neighborhood's crowded.
Yeah.
Is this holding up the sale?
No, it was going to, and then I told him Rob promised him he would do it. No, I'm kidding. That's a lie. That's a lie. Yeah, no. Yeah, I was gonna say. Yeah, no. Rob did not say that. I promise. He did not say that, and it's not holding up a sale either. What I was trying to do was just, to Rob's point, sometimes if you come across these, I was trying to fix the problem or solve the problem for this owner, prior owner, this owner, any future owner, so this issue didn't come up, because it could be a problem for somebody down the road in the saleability or marketability of the property, for sure.
So,
But
just-
my underwriter Bruce didn't have an issue with it, which I
so
was
if it does
shocked.
sell again, that they have to know that an easement
Well,
was
what
granted.
will happen is that if council agrees, Mr. Kidwell will do a written easement, and that the safety service director will sign, and that will be recorded in the chain of title. So every person who buys after this
Yes.
will get notice to say, hey, you need to be aware of this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they will get a notice that, hey, if it's over 51% damage,
Well, they
So-
can read the easement, because it'll be right there on the easement that is
Yeah.
recorded.
and that
the
comes
chain
out in
of
the title search every time.
Yep.
It does, because there's a reference back to the deed itself. Yeah.
Yeah.
'Cause we don't need I didn't know about it.
Well.
Yeah. No. So the ones that that Rob's office has sent over before, and I'm paraphrasing, but they basically say the city of Mount Vernon hereby grants an easement for so long as the existing structures are located there. Or if they're ever removed, destroyed, or replaced, or whatever, the easement is extinguished.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So.
Mr. Simmons, what's your intention tonight as far as reading this?
I would like to move this to the final reading, if that's okay. Anybody opposed to that? Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, thanks for putting me first. Also, I appreciate that.
Yeah.
Anybody want to go mow? All right. Have a good night, folks.
Take care.
Okay, thanks.
All right, we're going to adjourn the streets and public buildings. We're on recess until 7:30 p.m. But begin the legislative portion of the meeting.
Problem. I figured.
Cuisine.
Now
somebody-
7:30 p.m., going to call the legislative portion of the April 10th Mount Vernon City Council meeting to order. Mr. Hill, please call the roll.
Mr. Hillier.
Here.
Mrs. Siebel.
Here.
Mr. Severns.
Here.
Mr. Mahan.
Here.
Mrs. Woods.
Here.
Mr. Francis.
Here.
Ms. Keener.
Here.
We are in session. The invocation this evening will be given by Dr. Doug Bounds, retired ordained elder from the Church of the Nazarene. Pastor?
Let's pray. Oh God, we come here today thanking you for your grace and your love and your mercies. But God, we have other things that are on our hearts as well. We pray for protection of our children, our youth, our teachers, those on the front lines. And God, would you have your hand of protection upon them? Oh Father, we pray for transformation. We pray for those that are struggling with addictions and things like that, and their lives won't continue to be the same, but they will be transformed, that there will be those that are preparing to help them, to encourage them, will be available to them. And finally, Lord, we pray for restoration. Lord, we've seen so much in these days, and we just pray, God, that your Spirit will reign within us and that we can claim glory because of your presence in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen.
Thank you, Pastor. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Council, in your packet are the minutes from the March 27th meeting. Are there any additions or corrections? If not, I'd ask for a motion for approval.
So moved.
Second.
Moved and second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. They are approved. Mr. Hill, petitions and communications.
Yes, we have two petitions to be read into the record. The first one is a street vacation request. This is dated March 31st of this year. It is addressed to the Honorable Council of the City of Mount Vernon. We, the undersigned property owners owning 9 properties, Central Ohio Farmers Co-op, Inc., west side of Lewis Street, parcel 66-00268000, 66-04254000, 66-04256000, Central Ohio Farmers Co-op east side of Lewis Street, parcel number 66-0963700, 66-0965000. Respectfully petition your honorable body to pass the necessary legislation to vacate the portion of Lewis Street between Vine and Gambier Street, and also a portion of South Alley. This will allow us to improve our grain operation now while providing an opportunity to possibly expand it at a later date. I have attached a survey of the property we would like vacated and also a concept plan of potential future growth. As we own the properties on both sides of Lewis Street, this vacation would allow us to upgrade and improve our facilities to remain in Mount Vernon. Mr. Jamison Price, Location Manager, Central Ohio Farmers Co-op, 9150 Kinney Road, Mount Vernon, Ohio.
Thank you.
We would ask that that be referred to the Municipal Planning Committee for review.
Sure.
That's fine. Yeah. Another one, Mr. Hill? Is that-
Yes, a second one was dated April 6, 2023. We received it today. It is addressed to the Mount Vernon City Council. It is regarding Philip A. Green and Renee L. Green and Stephen P. Steyer and Justine R. Steyer, petition for annexation, City of Mount Vernon, parcels 55-02289.001 and 59-02289.000, Pleasant Township, Knox County, Ohio. To the City of Mount Vernon, you are being provided notice that Philip A. Green and Renee L. Green and Stephen P. Steyer and Justine R. Steyer had filed a petition for annexation of Knox County parcel numbers 59-02289.001 and 59-02289.000 to be annexed into the City of Mount Vernon with the Knox County Commissioners on April 3, 2023 at 10 a.m. Enclosed with this letter, you will find a copy of the petition along with all attachments and documents accompanying the petition as filed. Very truly yours, Critchfield and Johnston Limited. Zachary H. DeMarco, Attorney at Law.
Thank you. Mr. Ward, go ahead.
So, this is an annexation, and I've asked for just a couple of minutes to talk about what happens next. The notice of the filing with the county commissioner starts a clock running, and unfortunately, it is from the date that they filed it with the commissioners, which is April 3rd. And revised code section 709.023 requires that within 20 days of the filing that this council file a notice of municipal services, as well as within 20 days a filing status on incompatible land uses. Additionally, within 25 days of that filing, we need to file the consent or objection to that. You'll note our next meeting is on April 24th, which is actually potentially one day out of time. That led me to do some additional reading, and I would note that the revised code requires the petitioners to provide the clerk of council with that within 5 days of its filing. We did not actually receive it within 5 days. So I'm going to have to do some research into what, if anything, their failure to provide the notice as required by the revised code does to their petition. Additionally, but there's likely to be legislation for council that we will need to move on at the next hearing. As I go through and do the research on the timing, both their requirements and our requirements, I'll be sharing that with council so that we have an idea about where we're going to be at the next meeting.
You're saying, do we need a thumbs up or thumbs down at our next meeting?
Yes, we will have a decision one way.
Go ahead.
Is that the revised code? But in addition to that, we have the issue of what does their failure to give it to us in time, does that, or how does that affect our timeline?
When did we get it?
Today.
There's no way. The property he's talking about, remember we annexed the little house on Martinsburg Road?
Yeah.
So they could annex the other 100+ acres?
Yep.
It's all this game they've been playing. There's no way we can move on it that fast. It should not happen in
Well,
one reading.
there, like I said, is that what I want to do is, because it just came in this afternoon, and Mr. Hill signed for it this afternoon, I want to take the opportunity to do some reading to figure out about the timing, and I'm going to lay out for council the way this is going to play out so that everybody understands what council's options are. Now, the consent or objection here in the initial phase is very limited, and I'll lay out what we can and cannot do here. What happens later to accept the annexation, which is down the road, is different. And like I said, I want to lay this all out for everyone, and if need be, we can have a committee meeting to talk about that. And maybe we do want to do a committee meeting so we can talk about annexation and all of this prior to the next meeting.
But except for the fact they delivered it late, the next meeting, our next meeting, is technically too late.
Yes.
Okay.
But because,
That's a local lawyer. They had to walk it 2 blocks.
well, he sent it by, you can either do it personal service or you can do it by certified mail. He chose certified mail, and as we all know, the post office can't deliver squat.
That's not true. Yeah, I can track it for you if you like, if you give me the,
Oh, no, I know
if you give
exactly.
me the certified number, I can tell you how long it took.
It was mailed on the 6th. I have the certified, and it was arrived here on the 10th. So,
So I guess we need a 30-minute meeting next meeting?
how
How long do you think you need?
Somewhere between 20 and 30 minutes. Let's do 30 and then and that way. But my goal is to provide council with sort of an outline of the process and where we are and what's going to happen.
If we could put that on at the end of the meeting. My objection here is when we had the other piece that came to us, if you remember right, we got fouled up on dates on it as well.
We screwed that up, and, you know, that fell through the cracks, and that's why I wanna be upfront with everybody here, so that everybody knows exactly what our timing is and how we need to do that.
So let's be clear on what we're voting on if we vote on it at the next meeting. We're not voting on annexation, we're voting on,
We're voting on, there are 3 separate things, and 2 of those will technically be out of time. And that is municipal services provided and the use of incompatible land use and zoning buffer. And then the third thing that we'll have to vote on, but that has a different time frame. That's 25 days after the commissioners. And these are all dates and times in the revised code, so we're sort of stuck with them. That's whether we will consent or object to the annexation. And the consent or object is based upon very specific criteria that are laid out, and I want to provide that to council so we understand where we are here. Accepting the annexation is later, and that has a different, that will happen later, and so, and it has different criteria.
okay, so the commissioners have to act by when?
The commissioners had to act within a certain filing date. They acted on April 3rd. And then that starts our time.
So then after we go through this first step, but we're not voting for annexation at that point.
We're just voting on services, incompatible land uses, and consent, not actual annexation.
Okay.
Accepting the annexation.
And then it goes back to the commissioners from there?
Yes, because there's also notice sent to the township.
Okay.
Rob, can you help me remember when we approved the house, or the land with the house?
Yes.
I thought we approved that without access to utilities.
Well, yeah, the services.
Okay.
We provided it with police, fire and EMS, which we're already doing, and stormwater, so that we can charge them the fee.
Okay,
We have not agreed to provide them with water or wastewater.
okay. Okay, maybe I'll save my question for later.
And so that'll be, and when I do the legislation, it will mirror that.
Okay, thank you.
So we will not provide additional services beyond what we have already agreed to provide to the one little piece.
Okay.
Incompatible land use, what was the third one after that?
Consent to, and consent to or object to the annexation at this point is limited to certain factors in the revised code, and I'm gonna provide those to you so you understand what council can do at this time and can't do at this time, okay?
Can you explain incompatible land use here?
It has to do with the land uses around it, and if council should, at a later time, apply zoning to this parcel that would be incompatible with the previous township zoning around it, that there would be required to be a zoning buffer on the property. And we're just saying that we would do that if we applied that.
I know you're busy, but if any information, the sooner you get it to us, and I'm not talking the legislation itself.
No, but
Maybe some
like I said,
explanation.
is that, you know, we're gonna be working off of this, and,
Don't mail it.
no, I will email it though.
What say does the township have in all this?
The township has the same consent or object limited by the factors in revised code section 709.023.
Do they have the same time frame we are?
Yes.
So when will we hear theirs?
Well, we send it back to the commissioners.
Before it goes to township?
No, the notice goes to us and the township at the same time. And we both return our answers to the commissioners. They don't give it to us, we don't give it to them, we return it to the commissioners.
Okay.
We could find out when their meeting is if we all want to go crash it, though.
It's online.
All right. Thank you, I think. Okay. Council, in your packets were the committee reports. There was 4 of them in there for your review. I see no liquor control licenses, and with your permission, Mr. Francis usually read proclamations, but I would like to read this one this evening since I'm an Eagle Scout myself.
By all means.
This is special to me because being an Eagle Scout was a big step. And so we have a proclamation from the mayor and the clerk and city council congratulating Nicholas Grega for earning the rank of Eagle Scout in the Boy Scouts of America. Whereas Nicholas Grega has proven himself to be an outstanding member of the Boy Scouts of America and has achieved the highest rank of Eagle Scout. And whereas it takes years of dedication and commitment to achieve the Eagle rank, and whereas Eagle Scouts act as leaders and role models in the Mount Vernon community, and whereas the rank of Eagle Scout is a distinction that will follow Nicholas throughout his life and will be a beacon to others of the leadership quality and commitment to this young man that this young man has shown. And whereas the citizens of the city of Mount Vernon appreciate Nicholas's hard work to complete a significant service project that involved organizing a team of volunteers to build 3 free library book boxes outside 2 elementary schools and within an apartment complex to spread the love and accessibility of reading to residents. Now therefore be it proclaimed that Mount Vernon Mayor Matthew Starr and Mount Vernon City Council to hereby congratulate and recognize Nicholas Grega for his achievement of the rank of Eagle Scout. It's signed by council, the clerk of council, and the mayor. And Mr. Hill would ask that you make sure that Nicholas gets that. Congratulations, Nicholas, on that achievement. All right. I see no people wanting to speak on matters of city concern. So move now into the legislative portion of the meeting and council. That's in your packet, but you did have, that's in your packet, and the only thing we added this evening was that reading that the clerk read. So are there any other additions or corrections to the agenda? If not, I'll assume it's approved by consensus, and I'll ask Mr. Hill to read these by title and number only this evening. And we have no resolutions for third reading. We have some for second reading. The first one is Resolution 2023-31. Mr. Hill.
Resolution number 2023-31, a resolution authorizing the Safety Service Director to advertise for bids and enter into contract for the Elliott Street Sanitary Sewer Project and declaring an emergency.
Mrs. Woods.
Thank you, sir. I move to suspend the rules requiring 3 separate readings and take Resolution 2023-31 to its third and final reading.
Second.
Been moved and seconded for the suspension of the rules. Any discussion on the suspension? Mr. Hill.
Mr. Hillier.
Yes.
Mrs. Seaval.
Yes.
Mr. Severns.
Yes.
Mr. Mahan.
Yes.
Mrs. Woods.
Yes.
Mr. Francis.
Yes.
Ms. Keener.
Yes.
The rule is suspended. Mrs. Woods.
Thank you. Move to adopt Resolution 2023-31.
Second.
Been moved and seconded for the adoption of this resolution. Any discussion? Mrs. Woods.
So we had a committee meeting on this. Well, we had a blended committee meeting on this earlier. So if there's any other questions, Brian's not here, but I'm sure Rick could help us out. Or Mike, who could tell us why this is needed.
They have sewage in their yard. It's gonna be this year, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, we have to go to bid because it's over the $50,000 limit, but if approved, Brian will put the bid package together. We'll get it out with a number of other bids we're doing.
And
A
I
little
asked,
history on it, just so you know why it's in such a hurry. Elliott Street is a short street between Sugar and Hamtramck. And if you go down Elliott Street, you've never seen houses as close as that street is. So what affects one house is gonna affect the next one. So and this is actually, a neighbor brought it to my attention, so the system does work.
Any other discussion? Mr. Hill.
Mr. Hillier.
Yes.
Mrs. Seaval.
Yes.
Mr. Severns.
Yes.
Mr. Mahan.
Yes.
Mrs. Woods.
yes.
Mr. Francis.
Yes.
Ms. Keener.
Yes.
The resolution is adopted. Next resolution is resolution number 2023-32. Mr. Hill.
Resolution number 2023-32, a resolution authorizing the Safety Service Director of the City of Mount Vernon to grant an easement to the property located at 301 Boynton Street and declaring an emergency.
Mr. Severns.
Yes, I move to suspend the rule requiring 3 separate readings and take Resolution 2023-32 to its third and final reading.
Second.
Been moved and seconded for the suspension of the rules. Any discussion on the suspension? Mr. Hill.
Mr. Hillier.
Yes.
Mrs. Seaval.
Yes.
Mr. Severns.
Yes.
Mr. Mahan,
Yes.
Mrs. Woods,
Yes.
Mr. Francis.
Yes.
Ms. Keener.
Yes.
The rule is suspended. Mr. Severance.
Yes, I move to adopt Resolution 2023-32.
Second.
Been moved and second for the adoption of this resolution. Any discussion? Mr. Severance.
We had a meeting before here to talk about this. This is a house that's been there for 50, 60, 80 years, I don't know, and it's a 4-footer, which is a little bit more than we have had in the past, but I don't see any reason to stop this, stop from granting this easement. Anybody else?
Mr. Hill.
Mr. Hillier,
Yes.
Mrs. Seaval,
Yes.
Mr. Severance,
Yes.
Mr. Mahan,
Yes.
Mrs. Woods,
Yes.
Mr. Francis.
Yes.
Ms. Keener.
Yes.
Resolution is adopted. Next resolution is resolution number 2023-33. Mr. Hill.
Resolution number 2023-33, a resolution authorizing the Safety Service Director to release a request for qualifications for identifying and selecting a qualified firm or firms for closed-circuit televised inspection of the City of Mount Vernon's stormwater and sanitary sewer lines within and immediately adjacent to Tax Increment Financing or TIF District Number 1, identify and enter into contract with the selected firm or firms for those services, and declaring an emergency.
Mrs. Woods.
Thank you, sir. Move to suspend the rules requiring 3 separate readings and take Resolution 2023-33 to its third and final reading.
Second.
Been moved and second for the suspension of the rules. Any discussion on the suspension? Mr. Hill.
Mr. Hillier,
Yes.
Mrs. Seaval,
Yes.
Mr. Severance,
Yes.
Mr. Mahan,
Yes.
Mrs. Woods,
Yes.
Mr. Francis,
Yes.
Ms. Keener.
Yes.
The rule is suspended. Mrs. Woods.
Move to adopt Resolution 2023-33.
Second.
Been moved and second for the adoption of this resolution. Any discussion? Mrs. Woods.
So we also had a committee meeting on this, get some training for our folks on the cameras and get a whole lot of camera work done out in the Coshocton Road area. So any other questions, comments? Okay, thank you.
Mr. Hill.
Mr. Hillier,
Yes.
Mrs. Seaval,
Yes.
Mr. Severance,
Yes.
Mr. Mahan,
Yes.
Mrs. Woods,
Yes.
Mr. Francis,
Yes.
Ms. Keener.
Yes.
Resolution is adopted. Now we move to resolutions for first reading. The first one is resolution number 2023-40. Mr. Hill.
Resolution number 2023-40, a resolution authorizing and directing the Safety Service Director of the City of Mount Vernon, Ohio, to enter into contract with Gray Matter Systems, LLC, for Water Plant Control System Phase 6, WTP Filter PLC upgrade, and declaring an emergency.
Mrs. Woods.
Thank you. We'll give this a first reading. Can we do a 10-minute committee meeting next time, please?
This resolution receives its first reading. Next resolution is resolution 2023-41. Mr. Hill.
Resolution number 2023-41, a resolution authorizing the Safety Service Director to dispose of vehicles in the Police Department not needed for public use by the City of Mount Vernon, and declaring an emergency.
Mrs. Seabolt.
Thank you. I would like to suspend the rules requiring 3 separate readings and take resolution number 2023-41 to its third and final reading.
Second?
Been moved and seconded for the suspension of the rules. Any discussion on the suspension? Mr. Hill.
Mr. Hillier,
Yes.
Mrs. Seaval,
Yes.
Mr. Severance,
Yes.
Mr. Mahan,
Yes.
Mrs. Woods,
Yes.
Mr. Francis,
Yes.
Ms. Keener.
Yes.
The roll is suspended. Mr. Seabolt.
I move.
Mrs. Seabolt.
Move to adopt resolution number 2023-41.
Second?
Been moved and seconded for the adoption of this resolution. Any discussion? Mrs. Seabolt.
We have 5 vehicles here that, Rick, would you like to tell us about them?
Yeah, the police department, the first vehicle is a previous cruiser. I can report that today I signed the title for one of our SUVs that was sold for about $10,000. This is an old Impala that probably won't get nearly that much, but the police department has been very successful with recouping some funds for these sales. The rest of the items on the list would be impounded vehicles that went unclaimed. So.
Thank you.
Any other discussion? Mr. Hill.
Mr. Hillier,
Yes.
Mrs. Seaval,
Yes.
Mr. Severance,
Yes.
Mr. Mahan,
Yes.
Mrs. Woods,
Yes.
Mr. Francis.
Yes.
Ms. Keener.
Yes.
Resolution is adopted. Next resolution is Resolution 2023-42. Mr. Hill.
Resolution number 2023-42, a resolution authorizing and directing the Safety Service Director to prepare and submit an application to participate in the Ohio Department of Natural Resources Nature Works Grant for CA&C depot improvements and declaring an emergency.
Mrs. Skeeter.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move to suspend the rules and take Resolution 2023-42 to its third and final reading.
Second.
Been moved and seconded for the suspension of the rules. Any discussion on this suspension?
So this is the grant that we talked about last week that will offset a little bit of the cost of the paving work that we approved at the CA&C. So that's all this legislation does, is allows us to move forward for applying for that grant.
Mr. Hill.
Mr. Hillier.
Yes.
Mrs. Seaval.
Yes.
Mr. Severns.
Yes.
Mr. Mahan.
Yes.
Mrs. Woods.
Yes.
Mr. Francis.
Yes.
Ms. Keener.
Yes.
The rule is suspended. Mrs. Skeeter.
I move to adopt Resolution 2023-42.
Second.
Been moved and seconded for the adoption of this resolution. Any discussion? Mrs. Skeeter.
I think we've said everything, so.
Mr. Hill.
Mr. Hillier.
Yes.
Mrs. Seaval.
Yes.
Mr. Severns.
Yes.
Mr. Mahan.
Yes.
Mrs. Woods.
Yes.
Mr. Francis.
Yes.
Ms. Keener.
Yes.
The resolution is adopted. Next resolution is resolution number 2023-43. Mr. Hill.
Resolution number 2023-43, a resolution approving the appointment of Todd Hawkins as a regular member to the Municipal Planning Commission of Mount Vernon, Ohio, and declaring an emergency.
Mr. Francis.
Thank you, Mr. President. Request suspension of the rules requiring 3 separate readings. Take resolution number 2023-43 to its third and final reading.
Second.
Been moved and seconded for the suspension of the rules. Any discussion on the suspension? Mr. Hill.
Mr. Hillier.
Yes.
Mrs. Seaval.
Yes.
Mr. Severns.
Yes.
Mr. Mahan.
Yes.
Mrs. Woods.
Yes.
Mr. Francis.
Yes.
Ms. Keener.
Yes.
The roll is suspended. Mr. Francis.
Move to adopt resolution 2023-43.
Second.
Been moved and seconded for the adoption of this resolution. Any discussion? Mr. Francis.
Mr. Hawkins has been on our municipal planning for quite some time, several years. And the mayor's not here, so there's one other person I'm going to ask that might give us some insight on Mr. Hawkins'
Well, he's
pursuit
been an
into
alternate,
this.
and now this makes him a full member.
A full member.
A full member, and and I don't know why you're doing it to him right before we have the voting change out there in Vernon.
We need to make sure we have as many people as
Nope,
possible.
that was all I was going to say is he's been an alternate member for a long time and he'll be moving into a full member role.
And just, and I know we, up here, we all know this, they're not paid individuals, they're volunteers. And he actually stepped up the game to volunteer to put a little more time into it. So you have to love that. Now, I don't know if a member of his family might have encouraged that, to bump it up a little bit. Mike?
If I could, Mr. Hawkins has been an alternate, but he has been an active alternate. Rob, you've been in a lot of those meetings as well. He has voted on some of this we have coming up. He's been well aware.
Yeah.
Can you tell me who he's replacing?
Yeah, Bob Drews.
Rob Drews?
Bob Drews.
Or Bob Drews?
Yeah.
Thank you. That was a question asked of me today, and it's like, I can't see it anywhere. I don't know.
Mr. Drew's term expired, and he is replacing.
But Todd he's well versed. He's been there. He's been there when he didn't need to vote. So I have all the confidence in the world in him.
Thank you, Todd.
Does he come from good stock?
I can't tell you much about that.
Let's not go there. Any other questions? Mr. Hill.
Mr. Hillier.
Yes.
Mrs. Seaval.
Yes.
Mr. Severns.
Yes.
Mr. Mahan.
Yes.
Mrs. Woods.
Yes.
Mr. Francis.
Yes.
Ms. Keener.
Yes.
The resolution is adopted. Now we move on to ordinances. We have no ordinances for third reading. We have some for second reading. The first one is ordinance number 2023-10. Mr. Hill.
Ordinance number 2023-10, an ordinance to approve, adopt, and enact the February 2023 replacement pages to the codified ordinances, to repeal ordinances in conflict therewith, to publish the enactment of new matter, and declaring an emergency.
Mr. Hilliard.
I'd like to give it a second reading tonight, please.
This ordinance receives its second reading. We move now to ordinance number 2023-12. Mr. Hill.
Ordinance number 2023-12, an ordinance fixing the number of hourly employees in the City of Mount Vernon Police Department and declaring an emergency.
Mr. Mahan.
I'd like to give this its second reading.
This ordinance receives its second reading. We now move to ordinance number 2023-13. Mr. Hill.
Ordinance number 2023-13, an ordinance establishing the position of Engineering Department intern and declaring an emergency.
Mr. Francis.
Thank you, Mr. President. Also request suspension of the rules. Take ordinance 2023-13 to its third and final reading.
Second.
I move and second for the suspension of the rules. Any discussion on the suspension? Mr. Hill.
Mr. Hillier.
Yes.
Mrs. Seaval.
yes,
Mr. Severns.
Yes.
Mr. Mahan.
Yes.
Mrs. Woods.
Yes.
Mr. Francis.
Yes.
Ms. Keener.
Yes.
The rule is suspended. Mr. Francis.
Move to adopt resolution ordinance 2023-13.
Second.
Okay, moved and second for the adoption of this ordinance. Any discussion? Mr. Francis.
Thank you, Mr. President. We did have a nice committee meeting, and the information coming out of there is exactly how the engineering department utilizes the intern and how often they're in there, the stuff that they do. But I think for myself, what I enjoyed hearing the most was he hears back from them and the excitement from them of their first job. And as he said, some of them go on to do big things, the Treasury Department and manufacturing engineers. So it's not just working with just the municipality engineering departments, it's how it's boosted them to step out.
Any other discussion? Mr. Hill.
Mr. Hillier.
Yes.
Mrs. Seaval.
yes,
Mr. Severns.
Yes.
Mr. Mahan.
Yes.
Mrs. Woods.
Yes.
Mr. Francis.
Yes.
Ms. Keener.
Yes.
The ordinance is adopted. Now we move to ordinances for first reading. The first one is ordinance number 2023-14. Mr. Hill.
Ordinance number 2023-14, an ordinance to create the position of liaison for the Community Advocacy Relations Division of the Mount Vernon Police Department and declaring an emergency.
Mr. Francis.
Thank you, Mr. President. Give ordinance 2023-14 its first reading, like a 10-minute committee meeting, and just ask council read the job description that the chief had given us, and then give him any phone calls you need, any questions about it. Thank you.
This ordinance receives its first reading. Next, we move to ordinance number 2023-15. Mr. Hill.
Ordinance number 2023-15, an ordinance with reference to the wages and benefits of bargaining unit employees and fixing the wages and benefits of bargaining unit employees of the City of Mount Vernon firefighters and paramedics, IAFF Local 3712, wages to be effective the first day of July 2022, and further amending the terms of that agreement by memorandums of understanding and declaring an emergency.
Mr. Mahan.
Mr. President, I move to suspend the rules requiring 3 separate readings and move to take ordinance number 2023-15 to its third and final reading this evening.
second,
Been moved and seconded for the suspension of the rules. Any discussion on the suspension?
The reason we're asking for the discussion is this is a contract that's been under negotiation and has been through resolution. And if everyone's okay with suspending the rules, then we'll go ahead and have discussion on it when we move to adopt.
Any other questions on the suspension? Mr. Hill.
Mr. Hillier.
Yes.
Mrs. Seaval.
yes,
Mr. Severns.
Yes.
Mr. Mahan.
Yes.
Mrs. Woods.
Yes.
Mr. Francis.
Yes.
Ms. Keener.
Yes.
The rule is suspended. Mr. Mahan.
Mr. President, I move to adopt ordinance number 2023-15.
second,
Been moved and seconded for the adoption of this ordinance. Any discussion? Mr. Mahan.
Yes, so this is the contract that's been under negotiation. And Rick, if you want to explain, I believe that you all wanted to bring this just to have us approved, but this has really been decided. Is that correct?
That is correct. So council recall that in late December, they voted on whether to accept or reject a fact-finding report in this negotiation. While council voted to accept that report, the union voted to reject that report, which took us to what's considered binding conciliation. Under binding conciliation, the parties really have no other options. Whatever the conciliator decides, that's what becomes effective. The reason I wanted to discuss it with council tonight is essentially what the conciliator awarded was what you voted for last December. The two major issues were wages. The firefighters got comparable wages to our police and service departments. The second issue was hiring new firefighters in at a 56-hour work week. Typically, the city has operated on a 48-hour work week for firefighters, but the Fair Labor Standards Act allows cities to hire firefighters, even police, in at up to a 56 or 53-hour work week. So the union objected to that. The conciliator found in our favor. And I did just want to let council know that what you're voting on is the contract that is relatively identical to what you saw in December. The MOU for a signing bonus, which covers retroactivity pay, an MOU about an additional bonus when we get 5 56-hour firefighters in. And the reason there's a little bit of an extra 1% increase there is 5 56-hour firefighters saves us the need to hire another full-time firefighter. So the whole kind of concept of this is let's utilize our staff more that we have than hiring new staff in. And then the last MOU on this is really laying out in the contract, because we were focused more on the concept, how we treat them. You know, the 56-hour firefighters will get the same vacation leave, the same sick leave, the same personal leave, holiday time, all that kind of stuff. And that just lays it out to make everything very clear as we move forward for the next year or so. Rob, did you have anything?
No, it's just that we wanted to have council on record as to accepting. We don't actually expect the union is going to do anything, but because it's binding conciliation, we're required to accept it. But we just wanted to ask council to step up and endorse what they'd previously endorsed as we go forward with the union.
Thank you. Mr. Hill. Any questions?
Yeah. On the last page of this, the city auditor, I think his name is Terry Scott, and on this paper it says Jerry.
That wasn't us.
I've been called a lot of things.
That was an error made by the state's conciliation service, and we asked them to change it, and they apparently that change got lost, but that was not us.
Oh, okay.
But we tried to fix it.
He's been called worse.
Yes, and Jerry Scott would not be a good one for me.
No.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Mr. Hill.
Mr. Hillier.
Yes.
Mrs. Seavall.
Yes.
Mr. Severns.
Yes.
Mr. Mahan.
Yes.
Mrs. Woods.
Yes.
Mr. Francis.
Yes.
Ms. Keener.
Yes.
The ordinance is adopted. The final ordinance for this evening is ordinance number 2023-16. Mr. Hill.
Ordinance number 2023-16, an ordinance authorizing the Safety Service Director to accept the material terms of the National Opioid Settlement with Teva, Allergan, CVS, Walgreens, and Walmart, and declaring an emergency.
Mrs. Sebo.
Thank you. I would like to suspend the rules requiring 3 separate readings and take ordinance number 2023-16 to its third and final reading.
Second?
Been moved and seconded for the suspension of the rules. Any discussion on the suspension? Mr. Hill.
Mr. Hillier.
Yes.
Mrs. Seavall.
Yes.
Mr. Severns.
Yes.
Mr. Mahan.
Yes.
Mrs. Woods.
Yes.
Mr. Francis.
Yes.
Ms. Keener.
Yes.
The rule has been suspended. Mrs. Sebo.
Thank you. I'd like to move to adopt ordinance number 2023-16.
Second?
Been moved and seconded for the adoption of this ordinance. Any discussion? Mrs. Sebo.
Well, we're going to listen to Rick or Rob.
I'm passing it to Rob.
There have been a series of settlements with either opioid sellers or opioid producers. This involves 2 sellers and 3 retailers. This will allow the city to get in line for some of the settlement proceeds to help us, because we have been affected by these opioid sales. And we need to do it by the 18th.
So we'll get some money.
Yes. Or at least we'll have the opportunity to apply for it.
And the municipal league sent us something communication today asking us to make sure we act on this, so we got, they wanna make sure that people are in line to get the funds.
Yep.
Great, thank you.
Mr. Hill?
Mr. Hillier.
Yes.
Mrs. Seabolt.
Yes.
Mr. Severns.
Yes.
Mr. Mahan.
Yes.
Mrs. Woods.
Yes.
Mr. Francis.
Yes.
Ms. Keener.
Yes.
The ordinance is adopted. That concludes the legislative portion of the meeting. We now move to remarks of administration. Mr. City.
The mayor apologizes for not being here today. I talked to him yesterday. He's been under the weather all weekend and continues today. I can report it's not COVID, at least according to those at-home tests. So the only thing I wanted to mention today is we've been working diligently with our consultant at Compass Point Planners on the zoning code update. In the next day or two, we should have the first phase of our review up on the city website under our documents tab for both. I'll send it to City Council, but also for the public to look at and provide comment on. We have another meeting scheduled for May 1st. Honestly, the first two phases were pretty easy. It's basically what our zoning districts are going to be and some over general rules. I think we'll be starting to get into more of the nitty-gritty early next month. So keep looking out for that. Wendy's been great. She's been putting a lot of effort into it, so I look forward to seeing what the next phase of that is. That's all I have.
Thank you. Mr. Scott.
Nothing further, Mr. President.
Mr. Stoller.
Nothing tonight, Mr.
Mr. Braun.
I have nothing, thank you.
Mr. Mahan.
Thank you, sir. I'd like to welcome our new patrolman. We swore in Patrolman Cody Sexton to the Mount Vernon Police Department, and one of our lateral hires, I believe from Richland County. Is that correct, sir?
Yes, sir. Richland County Sheriff's Office.
And then we have another swearing in, you said, next week?
We had a swearing in this morning of a young lady named Lydia Grimes. She's going to be an auxiliary patrolman.
What else does she do in the city?
She's also a part-time Mount Vernon firefighter. So she's got her hands in several different pots. And we offered a conditional offer of employment to Andreas Cotter today to fill the two vacancies we currently have at the Mount Vernon Police Department. So once we get them hired and up to speed, we are back to full strength again with the two recent vacancies.
Excellent. So welcome to Mr. Sexton and his family. And I understand their tribe may even be increasing today.
It was supposed to increase by, we knew ahead of time he had a baby due today.
So
Well, his wife did.
Right, yes, yes.
So
We
we're
knew that going in, so he started with us a couple of days, and then we managed to schedule to give him some time off to be with his new family member, and he's gonna be back up to speed by the end of the week.
good. So welcome to them, and hopefully that has gone well. Thank you, Mr. President.
Has done well.
Mrs. Woods.
Nothing this evening, thank you.
Mrs. Siebel.
Nothing tonight, thank you.
Mr. Francis.
Thank you, Mr. President. Just a couple of things. I'm glad the chief's here. A lot of things we don't look at, and it doesn't, maybe it's just me, it didn't dawn on me. Coming home from work one day last week, I come across the viaduct, I'm heading north, and I look to my left, and I see a great big rescue raft in the water, in orange suits all over the place. And I'm thinking, oh no. So I get on Ohio Avenue and look over just before I pass Ambets, and I see the trucks, the squad, and people all over. And I wanted to roll in really bad, but the only thing that kept me from doing that is the river's up. Is this a recovery or a rescue? I don't want to get in the middle of it. So I got a hold of the chief the next day, and we have a Swift Team Rescue, Swift Water Rescue, and they was training. And I'm thinking, oh my gosh, I'm sure they took all the precautions, but there's still that possibility, even in training, whether it be with the police department, the detectives, the paramedics, and the fire individuals. They always, no matter what they're doing, they are putting their life on the line for each one of us, and that hits hard when you know they're out training in water you wouldn't even get close to, and they're jumping in it. This is the police department is doing training, and they're jumping right in the middle of it. So we have to really appreciate what they're doing, and not only that, the street department individuals and stuff working in the streets. We know how people slow down to go around them. You know, that's something that doesn't really happen. So all of them, the work that they do is just unbelievable. So thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you. Mrs. Skinner.
Thank you, Mr. President. I just would like to let everybody know that Cinderella is being done at the Mount Vernon High School on Friday, April 21st and Saturday, the 22nd. They have a great director and a lot of talent out there, and I would just encourage anybody who can to get out and see that show. Thank you, Mr. President.
And I understand we have a special council meeting next Monday.
We do, the 17th.
And I would ask that you take the roll and stuff and give it to Mr. Hill. I don't see any sense in him being there. So since it's your committee, take the roll and we'll begin the meeting and then adjourn the meeting. Just take those minutes and give it to Mr. Hill so we have that. No sense in him being there for that.
No.
That portion of it. Mr. Hillier.
Thank you, Mr. President. 3 items. Chief, any work on, I haven't seen an email about the nuisance, the way Mr. McConville handles theirs and how we're maybe looking at that.
Mr. McConnell's going to give me some information on that through the common police court. Last week was not a good week for him.
That's fine. Will you be sending it on to me like we talked?
Yes, I will.
I'd like to be able to get that, if we're gonna do something different, I'd like to be able to do that before I'm done this year. Thank you. Council, I sent to you the schedule for municipal planning. It's called 0 Vernon View Drive. Will be up for change of zoning. That is May 4th, 4 p.m. and it is at the station break on Howard Street. If you can be there, I think it'd be to your benefit. I will also contact Jim Hughes from Pleasant Township trustees and ask him when they're going to review this annexation. If it works my schedule, I plan on attending, so he wants to go. It's right out there on 586. Just another quick, interesting tidbit. We've talked a lot about police and fire. April Fool's Day, I had a guy decide that he didn't need to stop for red light, and we kind of met in the intersection right next to the police station. So I had the experience of riding in the back of the squad to the hospital, and I knew the one gal that was working on me a lot. I didn't think she worked for a fire department that I knew of as a regular, so I figured she was a volunteer. So as I'm strapped to the hospital, to the bed, and not a whole lot I can do but bounce on I found every crack on the way from Gay Street to the hospital, by the way. If you
We're
ever
working,
wanna
we're working on
if
this.
you ever want to know which streets need paved, right in this quad. So I said to this guy, I said, "You're a volunteer, right?" She said, "Yeah." And I said, "You're a Kennedy student, right?" She goes, "How do you know this?" And I said, "Well, I voted for you to be able to do this." So I said, "What are you studying at school?" She says, "Finance." I says, "So why are you doing this?" And she says, "I like this." It's like, well, I thought maybe you'd say pre-med, surgery. No, I just like doing this. There was everything that was dealt with me, even including the hospital, was top notch. But the next not, but we're working on that. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Severance.
Yes, I would just like to remind our local vendors that the corrugated plastic signs need to be put on private property and not on city property. I believe that we're still trying to clean some of those up from what I understand, but seem to kind of be growing a little bit here recently again. So those plastic signs can be on private property but not on city property, which is basically between the sidewalk and the curb. That's where they're not allowed to be. So I just want to remind people if they're listening out there. Thank you.
Thank you. That concludes the comments. I'd like to thank the media for being here this evening. And thank you, council, for your participation tonight. That being said, I call for adjournment.
So moved.
Second.
Been moved and second. We adjourn. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed nay. We are adjourned.
Cheryl, do you know when that meeting is?